Yaiba is a young samurai raised in the wilderness by his cool dad, Kinjiro. He doesn't go to school or have a life like a regular boy, so today he's straight up fighting a gorilla during his casual afternoon training session. The match starts and Yaiba easily dodges all of the gorilla's attacks, even having time to flex on him. But he gets a little too cocky and gets caught and thrown into the air. With the help of his other animal friends, he's able to get a mid-air boost and he ends up falling down to deliver the strongest overhead sword strike you've ever seen right on the gorilla's noggin. Yaiba and the animals celebrate and his dad comes over to congratulate him. Good job, son. Beating gorillas is a piece of cake, Yaiba replies. But then all the other gorillas see that their homie just got taken down, so they surround them having dirty looks on their faces. At first, Kenjiro thinks about taking them all on at once, but later realizes that he only has one life, so they all immediately start running away while the gorillas chase them. Yaiba and Kenjiro end up hiding in some cargo crates filled with bananas as they see the gorillas run by. But then one of the blind cargo workers doesn't see them in there, so he places the lid on the box and nails it shut, trapping them inside. Just like that, they are put in a truck, heading straight for Japan. Meanwhile, at the airport, little Sayaka waits around and finally spots her dad, Reizo, walking in. She rushes over to him. "Congrats on winning the Asia Kendo Championship," she says. Reizo pats her head, thanking her, but deep down he feels that he can never be a true champion until he defeats Yaiba's dad, Kenjiro. Just then, they hear some strange sounds coming from behind them. They look back and see Yaiba flying right towards them. Yaiba can sense that Sayaka's dad is pretty strong, so he draws his sword, challenging him to a fight. But Sayaka steps in, trying to protect her dad, using an umbrella as her sword, and boldly asks him who he is. Yaiba confidently introduces himself. After Sayaka's dad hears his surname Kurogane, he starts to wonder whether his dad is the arch-nemesis Kenjiro Kurogane. Our boy Yaiba has never seen a girl before in his life, so he looks at Sayaka and asks her, "What are you?" He realizes that Sayaka is an actual girl, so he goes crazy and immediately tries to find out what's under her skirt, but Sayaka unleashes her ultra instinct and bonks him on the head, which makes Yaiba conclude that girls are scary. Just then, Kenjiro is seen at the other end, running toward them while the police trail behind him. Reizo spots him from a distance and gives off an evil smirk. This is the moment he has always waited for, his chance to find out who will emerge victorious in their legendary battle. Reizo strikes his pose, but Kenjiro just grabs him. "Let's get out of here, man." After which, Yaiba and Sayaka follow. They take a taxi to the city and Yaiba presses his fat face against the window as he looks at how beautiful the city is. Shortly after, they arrive at Reizo's house, where Kenjiro tells Yaiba things are going to change from now on. "Welcome to your new home." Yaiba goes into the house and looks around, impressed by how nice it is, but is immediately thrown to the ground by his short-ass great-grandma who has never met him before. She asks Yaiba who he is. Kenjiro walks in later, and after Granny sees the striking resemblance and ugliness between them, she immediately knows that he is Kenjiro's son and tells Reizo and Sayaka they should all keep them company and are welcome. About an hour later in the dojo, Yaiba is really excited to see the other samurais as he's eager to find a samurai who's either as strong as him or even stronger. Kenjiro tests them all by tapping them on the back and they all fail except one who manages to block. Kenjiro suggests Yaiba spar with that guy. Reizo doesn't think that's a good idea because that guy is Muto, the dojo's best samurai. Granny doubts that Yaiba would even stand a chance against him, but his father is confident in him. He sets a deal with Granny. If Yaiba wins against Muto in the sparring match, then they'll all live here together. But if he loses, they'll get lost. Granny agrees and tells Muto that he has permission to go full force, but Muto doesn't understand why because he's just sparring against a little kid. Yaiba stands there bored, telling Muto to hurry it up already and stop behaving like a gorilla, which makes Muto get really annoyed. Granny suggests that Yaiba wear some safety pads, but he replies, "Nah, Dad always says those are for weaklings. And besides, I've never lost a match to a gorilla, so I think I'll be just fine." This overconfidence pisses Granny off. The match commences and Yaiba starts things off by taking really heavy swings at Muto. Granny and Sayaka observe his fighting style and see that it's not the most efficient because Muto can easily see his attacks coming from a mile away. Meanwhile, Yaiba smiles, saying he's impressed at how strong Muto is because he hasn't even been able to land a single hit. Muto decides to go on the offensive this time and Yaiba starts to struggle and even gets slightly overpowered. But then Muto says something that makes Yaiba's two brain cells click. "We're not in the jungle, you dumbass." This makes Yaiba realize that in order to win this fight, he can't fight Muto the same way he fought the animals in the jungle. He needs to adapt. So after that realization, he turns his back on Muto and takes a deep stance, which leaves everyone watching with their jaws dropped. Granny sees this and smirks, thinking Yaiba has either just given up or is just a dumbass. Still, she signals Muto to deliver the final blow now that Yaiba is open. Muto lifts his sword with all his might, ready to deliver the final blow, and right as he does, Yaiba dodges it, leaving Muto with a shocked look on his face. Yaiba then launches his sword and delivers the final blow to Muto, which is delivered with so much power it breaks his sword and even sends him flying upwards into the roof, leaving everyone watching stunned. Yaiba realizes that he's won, so he hits his signature emotes while everyone just stares at him in disbelief of what just happened. Granny has never seen such raw strength and uncultivated swordsmanship in such a young boy before. Meanwhile, Kenjiro has just finished downing a full crate of beers and is drunk, but still proud of his son for beating Muto. Raizo facepalms. Now he's going to have to hold his end of the bet and let them live in his house indefinitely. The worst part is that they're not even going to help with the rent. Sayaka notices that Yaiba is doing something strange. He has tied Muto to the roof and is holding a wooden stick. She asks him what he's about to do, but he replies, saying it's survival of the fittest, just like he does in the jungle. This pisses Sayaka off, so she tells him, "You're not in the jungle anymore, you fool." In the middle of the night, while Sayaka is trying to get her beauty sleep, she wakes up because Yaiba is training loudly on the roof for some reason. She comes out of her room, which shakes the house a bit and causes him to fall off the roof. She scolds him. Do you know what time it is? But Yaiba doesn't understand what she means because in the jungle, there's no such thing as sleep. Later that morning, it's now time for breakfast, so Yaiba rushes in to get his, but Sayaka stops him to ask a question about something that has been bothering her ever since he arrived. Why do you have a tiger with you? This is a tale that Yaiba loves to tell, so he starts off by narrating that one day, when he was in the jungle, he was trying to catch some fish but didn't have any luck. That's when the tiger snuck up on him and tried to eat him, but Yaiba accidentally blocked the attack by using his spear to hit the tiger right in the balls. The tiger fell into the water and started to drown. The movements of his actually helped get the fish out of the water. Ever since that day, he and the tiger started to spend quality time together, and just like that, they became best of friends. But judging by the look on Sayaka's face, she doesn't look satisfied by that story. Just then, Reizo realizes that he hasn't seen Kenjiro, Yaiba's dad, all morning. That's when one of the maids comes to drop off a letter that he left for them before he left. Long story short, he set out into the city for a little while and left Yaiba behind, which pisses Reizo off because it's awful parenting. But Yaiba tells him not to be so hard on his dad because when they were in the jungle, he was always going off and leaving him alone on his own. A couple of hours later, Yaiba follows Sayaka out into the streets because he's curious about where she's going dressed up like that. "I'm going to school, you dumbass," she replies. Yaiba has spent his entire life in the jungle and has never been to a school before, so he asks her what it's all about. She tells him that it's a place where people learn, but Yaiba doesn't understand what that even means, so he takes it the wrong way and thinks she means that it's a place filled with really strong warriors who come together to train. Hearing this, Sayaka decides to troll him a bit. She turns back and tells him that it's a place filled with a ton of strong monsters and samurai, and that he wouldn't even stand a chance against any of them. Shortly after, they arrive at the school, and Yaiba is shocked as he sees just how large a school building is. Some of Sayaka's friends come over, take a single look at Yaiba, and think he's really cute. Yaiba sees them and acknowledges that this is his second ever encounter with girls, so he starts to sniff them all, which makes them all jeer with excitement. But this is all a little too much to handle, so Sayaka just drags him out of there while the girls just stare, wondering what they did wrong. It's now time for Sayaka to go to one of her classes, so she tells Yaiba to wait there for her, but he disagrees, saying that he came here to protect her, so he can't just leave her alone like that. Sayaka realizes that she only brought this upon herself, so she gives in and takes him into the dojo classroom, telling him to just be quiet and watch. Yaiba goes inside and immediately gets excited because he sees a lot of samurai stuff, just like what they have in the house. Sayaka replies, "That's nice, but I've got to go change." So she walks toward the changing room, telling him to just stay there and stay quiet. Right as Sayaka is about to take her top off, she shakes a bit as she hears Yaiba in the changing room with her, telling her, "What's up, fine shit?" He stops catcalling her and sees that she's starting to get a little angry, which confuses him because his pops had always told him that girls were into that kind of stuff. Sayaka then summons her inner chakra and kicks him out of the room. He heads back into the dojo classroom and sees some samurai swords. He picks one up when a tall guy who's trying to pull off Satama's haircut comes up behind him and says, "That's dojo property. Keep your hands off." Yaiba jumps back and assumes a battle stance. Sayaka comes out of the changing room and sees that in the 5 minutes she left Yaiba alone, he's about to go head-to-head with the samurai national champion. After Yaiba learns that this guy is really strong, he immediately asks for a sparring match, but the guy walks away. "You're not worth my time." Yaiba then tries to deliver a sneak attack, but the guy quickly adjusts his pivot and counters the attack, knocking the sword out of Yaiba's hands. The Saitama dude looks at Yaiba with a serious face and tells him to get out of here because this isn't a kiddie playground. Yaiba smirks. This is the first time anyone has ever been able to knock a sword out of his hands. Yaiba introduces himself and asks for the guy's name. "I'm Takeshi Onamaru," he says, and just like that, Yaiba begins his lifelong rivalry with Onamaru. Quick backstory about Onamaru: he currently lives alone and takes care of his bird poultry, while his sister is away for the kendo seminars, but at least he texts her every day to update her on what's going on. He tells her that this year's national kendo competition is coming up, and as usual, he plans on securing the first place slot. His entire extended family has always supported him and are going to be watching the event, so he knows he can't screw this up and he won't be defeated. The next day at school, Yaiba is busy annoying Sayaka as usual. Then as he runs off, he accidentally bumps into his arch-nemesis, Onamaru. Yaiba is still hungry for a duel with him, so he draws his sword asking for one, but Onamaru just replies he'd rather barf, and besides, he's way stronger than him. He then walks away, going up the stairs while Yaiba follows, having an annoyed look on his face. Yaiba tries a sneak attack, but Onamaru already saw that coming, so he swiftly sidesteps it and knocks Yaiba off his feet, making him lose the little aura he had left. Then before Onamaru leaves, he tells Yaiba to come back after training for a couple decades, and maybe he'll be stronger enough. After that, he walks away while giving off an evil laugh. At this point, Yaiba is really pissed off. Sayaka has a concerned look on her face, but she thinks that Onamaru isn't willing to spar with Yaiba, probably because he has nationals coming up, so he just wants to stay focused. She tries convincing Yaiba to just leave the dude alone, but our boy just ignores it and looks back at her, having a crazy look on his face, saying he's got an idea. A couple hours later at the Shobukan Dojo, Sayaka is starting to get worried because she hasn't seen Yaiba at all since their last encounter, and she just knows he's about to do some dumb shit. In the boys' locker room, Onamaru can't find any of his samurai gear, making him feel frustrated. Then one of the snitches tells him that he saw Yaiba with him earlier in the hallway. This is confirmed when Onamaru finds a letter that Yaiba left behind, which says, "Hey you idiot, it's Yaiba." Onamaru crumples the paper in anger and then rushes outside, where he sees the first part of his training gear sitting right out in the open. Onamaru is confused why it's just out there like that. Then as he bends down to pick it up, he triggers the trap set for him. A bucket of water falling from above, but he swiftly dodges it and says it'll take a lot more than that to catch him lacking, with a smirk on his face. Meanwhile, Sayaka has already started training in the dojo, and she's worried because it's been close to 30 minutes since practice started and Onamaru and Yaiba are nowhere to be seen. Onamaru is seen dashing through the hallways as he sees the next piece of his equipment, but right before he gets there, he triggers the tripwire that was set, causing the lockers to fall onto him, but luckily he escapes right in the nick of time. As he picks up the gear, a hidden arrow springs out, but he dodges it, so it only manages to graze his face. He then smirks and hits the most iconic anime one-liner, saying things just got interesting. Yaiba sits on top of the roof, wondering what's taking Onamaru so long to get there, but just then, Onamaru bursts through the door, carrying his gear and panting heavily. Yaiba yet again asks for a sparring match with him, but Onamaru refuses and just tells him to give him his gear back because he's not fighting a loser like him. That said, Yaiba throws his headgear off the building, and as he rushes to go get it, Yaiba kicks him in the shins, which makes him stumble a bit, but he's still able to grab the headgear. After that, he does a lot of unnecessary parkour, and even sticks the landing for 5 extra aura points, which makes everyone around stare in shock. But he immediately loses those aura points as he falls into the pit that Yaiba dug up for him. Definitely didn't see that one coming. Yaiba looks at him from above, asking him whether he wants to reconsider the sparring match, but Onamaru still refuses, so Yaiba just fills the hole with different sports balls and closes him in, after which he walks away. The next day, Onamaru is trying to feed his birds, but he can't hide the fact that he is so pissed off at Yaiba for what he pulled yesterday, saying if it's a fight he wants, he's gonna get it. Onamaru later realizes he's raising his voice at his birds, so he apologizes to them. A couple hours later, Sayaka is watering the street for some reason, but in the next moment, she's shocked to see Onamaru standing right in front of her asking for Yaiba. Sayaka tells him that Yaiba isn't at home right now, but right as Onamaru responds, he accidentally steps on Katagora, the family tiger. She's not in the best mood today, so she charges at Onamaru trying to attack, but using just 3 strikes. Onamaru puts her down for the count. Granny then walks in after seeing that display and tells Onamaru that a swordsman shouldn't be acting that way. She also overheard that he was looking for Yaiba, so she tells him she heard him mention he was heading to his house earlier. Right as he hears that, he immediately rushes back home before Yaiba can do anything dumb. After he leaves, Sayaka expresses her concern because she thinks Yaiba is going to get his ass beat by Onamaru, but Granny has faith in him and thinks it's actually going to be the other way around. Yaiba arrives at Onamaru's house looking for him and requesting a duel, but he doesn't find him there. Instead, he finds Shonusuke, his old vulture friend who flew all the way from the jungle just to come and see him. As Onamaru rushes back home, he sees Yaiba flying on Shonusuke in the opposite direction, then a feather falls right in front of him, so he just knows they messed with his bird poultry. Onamaru gets home and sees that his bird poultry has been torn down. The leftover birds even have tears in their eyes because of the trauma they just witnessed. This only makes Onamaru's hatred for Yaiba grow even stronger. Yaiba also gets home and sees that Onamaru had hurt Katagura. Sayaka says it's only fair since he's been messing with him ever since he got here, but Yaiba doesn't care. He's holding a grudge. They both run towards each other and meet in the town square. They draw their swords, ready to fight. One of the police officers tries to separate the fight, but they just tell him to stay out of it. Their match starts with Yaiba delivering a strong kick to the face, but Onamaru calls him a cheat and tells him to only fight with his sword. Sword to sword, they are always evenly matched in power and technique as they dance all around the market square, blocking and dodging each other's attacks. Yaiba flips him onto a bus and they continue the fight there, but they are still an even match for each other. The bus takes a hard turn, making Yaiba fall into the neighboring truck filled with logs of wood. Yaiba, despite his small stature, manages to lift an entire log of wood and throws it at Onamaru. Onamaru easily uses his sword to slice it up, but after he does, Yaiba is nowhere to be seen. Yaiba hid behind one of the logs of wood Onamaru chopped up. He sneaks up behind and launches an overhead attack, but Onamaru still manages to block it. As a last resort, Yaiba decides to bite Onamaru right on his face, causing blood to leak out of his injury. After that, Onamaru is disoriented, so he throws a careless strike. Yaiba dodges it and quickly follows it up with a forehand strike, which connects on Onamaru's face, causing him to fall to his knees. Yaiba acknowledges that he has just defeated his arch-nemesis Onamaru, so he jumps up to celebrate, but unfortunately, he ends up splattered on a road sign, just like one of those old-timey cartoons. Later that evening, both Onamaru and Yaiba are seen whining like babies as they dress the wounds from their fight. Granny walks up to Yaiba. She heard about the fight, but she's not happy that he had to bite him in the head to win, so she doesn't consider that a victory for him. That said, Yaiba is determined to defeat Onamaru fair and square the next time they fight. After Sayaka is done dressing his wound, he, Katagura, and Shonusuke go up to the roof for some training, but he kicks both their asses in record time. That training method has become way too easy for him now, so he tries blindfolding himself and telling them to attack him, but they aren't too sure why he would want that. Sayaka is also curious why he's doing that, so Granny explains to her that he's training his Shingen. His Shingen opens one's mind perception. If Yaiba masters it, he would be able to sense his opponent and anticipate their next move. It's just like what he did when he fought the samurai earlier. It's a very critical skill in sword fighting. Yaiba tries fighting Shonusuke and Katagura using his perception, but he hasn't mastered it, so he quickly gets knocked down while they celebrate with laughter. Still with that, Yaiba isn't discouraged and says, "Let's try that again." Sayaka observes him and smiles because she just realized how determined Yaiba is, but it doesn't take Yaiba long to piss her off yet again because he refuses to take his blindfold off even at the dinner table, so he's just using his fork to poke around her food. That night, Sayaka is naked in the bathtub, reminiscing all the events that happened today, but just then, Yaiba walks in with his blindfold on and clothes off, and he's wearing a blindfold, so he doesn't even know she's in there. Sayaka blushes as she takes a look at Yaiba's tiny soldier, after which she kicks him out. Meanwhile, Onamaru is currently being tormented in his dreams by Yaiba because of the fight they had the other day. As the ghosts of Yaiba surround him and start biting him in unison, he jolts out of bed, saying, "Oh, it was just a dream." Onamaru doesn't want to be caught lacking, so he gets out of bed and immediately starts training while repeatedly saying in his head, "I'm going to get my revenge." Onamaru has always won every fight that he has fought, so the fact that he just lost to Yaiba in such an uncultured way pissed him off. He knows he needs to get strongest one way or another. It's a must. He gets a taunting image of Yaiba in his head again, so he crashes out and accidentally uses his sword to destroy one of the stone monuments in his home. After he calms down, he realizes that he may have overreacted a bit, but what he finds a lot more intriguing is the fact that there's a hidden staircase in the house that he never knew about. Curiosity gets the best of him, so he steps inside, wondering what this place is. He enters the main room and sees a bunch of statues of old Japanese gods surrounding a pretty cool-looking sword. The sword was too shiny not to touch, so Onamaru tries picking it up, but before he does, the statues start to speak to him. telling him that if he picks up that sword, he will inherit all the power from them and become the strongest swordsman to walk the earth. Onimaru hears this and realizes that with this sword, Yaiba won't stand a chance against him, so he places his hand on the handle, trying to pick it up. A bright blue blinding light emerges from the sword as he picks it up. His body then starts to transform and undergo changes. His eyes turn to a bright red color. After he pulls it out of the ground, there's a bright explosion, and once it settles, Onimaru is holding the sword confidently in the air as it has a bright blue aura around it. But there's also something different about Onimaru. He now has two ugly-ass horns on his head and a striking new confidence. Nothing can stop him now. Meanwhile, Yaiba's granny looks through his magical sword and can tell that the vile Oni has been awakened. The next day, Yaiba is seen on the roof practicing his blindfold fighting technique known as the Kekai. The Kekai is a special technique that marks the finite zone in which he can sense an opponent's attack. So that invisible barrier is referred to as the Kekai. Still, Granny decides to perform a small test on our boy Yaiba, so she throws a rock at him. To both Granny and Sayaka's surprise, Yaiba senses the stone coming and instantly blocks it like a boss, but instantly loses all his aura as the stone comes back down to hit him in the head. The next day at school, Yaiba arrives and all the class baddies surround him, saying he looks really adorable. Sayaka sees this and just stares, wondering what those girls see in a dumbass like him. After that, some of Yaiba's pervy classmates show him some explicit photos of girls with huge water jugs. Yaiba looks at them and casually says that he often takes baths with Sayaka and the ones she has are nowhere near the shapes or sizes of the ones in the magazine. Sayaka obviously overhears this and gets pretty embarrassed, so she's now about to smack our boy over the head with a guitar, but she instantly freezes in shock as Yaiba detects her even without looking back. Just then, some of their classmates draw attention to the window, so Yaiba comes to take a look and sees Onimaru walking into school with those ugly horns on his head. Yaiba observes that Onimaru has gotten bigger and has a shady aura around him, so he naturally starts to get a little intimidated. Onimaru unsheaths his sword and challenges Yaiba to a duel to determine once and for all who's stronger. Yaiba naturally gets excited at the mention of a duel, so he picks his sword up and immediately jumps out of the window. Yaiba lunges at him, but instantly gets startled as Onimaru uncases his sword and lands a swift strike. However, Yaiba manages to dodge it at the last second, so it only manages to graze him a bit. Yaiba repositions and yells at Onimaru for playing dirty by using a real sword instead of a fake samurai one. Sayaka and the others realize that's a real sword, so they start to get worried about what the outcome of this fight would look like. Yaiba staggers back, Onimaru lands an overhead strike, but Yaiba is able to dodge and then grabs a steel pipe to use as a makeshift sword. Onimaru sees it and scoffs, "You think you can beat me with that piece of trash," he says. He follows that up with another strike. This time it grazes him on the arm. At this point, Yaiba is really starting to get concerned because he can't even track any of Onimaru's movements before he makes them. With that in mind, he closes his eyes and tries to focus on the Kite technique to try and track his movements. Onimaru could tell Yaiba is about to use the Kite technique, but he just scoffs because he doesn't think that's going to be enough to take him down. He starts with an overhead strike, but Yaiba easily catches it, with his eyes closed for that matter. At first, Onimaru has a shocked expression, then later he smirks, in his mind saying, "Things just got interesting." Onimaru proceeds to launch a flurry of attacks on him, but Yaiba blocks every single one of them without opening an eye. At a point, our boy manages to counter Onimaru's attack by almost landing a direct blow to the face. Following that, Yaiba jumps up into the air and then starts to take the offensive position, and Onimaru is now starting to sweat. After they're separated, Onimaru smirks in confidence because he knows he has something up his sleeve. In the next moment, he draws his sword and unleashes its magic, which sends a swift gust of wind straight at Yaiba, which sends him flying into a wall. Yaiba falls to the ground and Onimaru stands over him, telling him to be a man and finish the fight. Yaiba can sense Onimaru is about to launch another wind attack, so he knows he needs to slash the wind before it gets to him. Just as he predicted, Onimaru launches another wind attack. Yaiba uses his steel pipe to try and stop it, but Onimaru is just too powerful, so he is sent flying backwards deeper into the wall. Now Onimaru plans on ending things, so he draws his sword, ready to deliver the final blow. Sayaka spectates, begging Onimaru to stop, saying he's proved his point so he should just let Yaiba go. Well, that pisses Onimaru off, so he tells her to shut the F up, after which he attacks her by sending a slash of wind. The wind shatters the glass of the windows, scaring off all of Sayaka's classmates, but Sayaka doesn't run. With tears in her eyes, she begs Onimaru to let Yaiba go. Yaiba, although in a dire condition, tells Sayaka to get back, he's going to handle this. Onamaru launches his final attack, a gust of wind that Yaiba is unable to control, so it splits the entire school building in half, sending Sayaka flying with a pretty rough landing. Sayaka musters up some strength, looks up to the sky, and sees that Yaiba has been rescued at the last minute by his little bird friend. Onamaru looks up at him and just starts to laugh maniacally, because he acknowledges this as the first battle he won against Yaiba. Back at home, our boy is pretty sad about losing to Onamaru. He calls himself names such as pathetic and weakling, then proceeds to make a really ugly face while crying. Sayaka and the others see Yaiba sobbing and share feelings of empathy for him. But that's when Yaiba's dad comes out of nowhere with a bright smile on his face and says, "My boy is growing." After that, he sits down and starts by informing Yaiba that what he experienced in his battle with Onamaru was Fujinkan. It's a technique that has immense power and can stir up storms like the god of the wind. Supposedly, its powers have been sealed away, but Onamaru had somehow managed to awaken it. After hearing this story, Yaiba's jaw drops as he wonders whether this means that sword is unbeatable. Kenjiro replies saying that against the Fujinkan, only the Rajukin sword stands a chance. The Rajukin is a sword that, once grasped, darkens the skies and unleashes a flurry of lightning. Kenjiro thinks back and recalls that an old guy named Miyamoto has the sword. Yaiba is eager to know where he can find the sword, but his father warns Yaiba, with a serious look on his face, even if he was somehow able to get the sword, it would take him years to learn how to safely wield it. Yaiba claps back, saying, "I don't care how many years it takes, I'm going to find that sword and use it to kick Onamaru's butt." Kenjiro finally gives in, saying the sword is up at Mount Tengu. Sayaka hears this and says she knows the place. Yaiba just smiles maniacally, because he knows he's going to make her take him there anyways. Meanwhile, Onamaru is busy checking himself out in the mirror, wondering what he's going to do with all this power he now has. That in mind, he thinks to put his new power to the test. In the next scene, Sayaka wakes up tied to Katagora's back as Yaiba walks in front of them, saying she's going to take him to Mount Tengu to go and get the magic sword. Along the way, Sayaka complains of her clothes being too messy, so Yaiba brings out a couple of clothes he got from her room, but Sayaka doesn't really like the fact Yaiba was rummaging through her clothes. But still, she has no choice but to put them on. Yaiba steps away to go find some food for them to eat, all while Sayaka stands there wondering whether this Miyamoto guy is actually in these woods. About an hour later, Yaiba manages to catch some meat, he roasts it, and everyone seems to be enjoying it. Just then, they all hear a rustling sound. They look back to see what it was. A creepy old grandpa then swoops in from behind and steals their meat. Yaiba spots him at the top of a tree and draws his sword, ready for battle. Sayaka then steps in and tells him to stop because that's the old man Miyamoto his Daz was talking about earlier. Miyamoto jumps down furious. "I'm not that old," he says. Yaiba confidently states that he's here to obtain the Rajukin sword. Sayaka proceeds to beg Miyamoto, saying he should just give them the sword and then they'll be out of his way. Miyamoto surprisingly agrees, so he tells them to follow him. He takes them to his house, but it's more of a tree house. Yaiba finds it to be kind of strange, but Sayaka is actually really fascinated by it. What she finds even more fascinating is the fact that he built it all by himself. That aside, Miyamoto goes on to inform Yaiba that many swordsmen have attempted to get past him in their quest to obtain the Rajukin sword, but every last one of them has been reduced to dust. Only a legendary samurai can wield the sword. For over 400 years, he has watched over that sword, waiting for the legendary samurai to come and claim it. The old man's full name is Musashi Miyamoto. Sayaka instantly recognizes that name as the great swordsman, but Yaiba, on the other hand, has never heard of this guy. But he doesn't really care anyway. He just tells Miyamoto to tell him where the sword is so he can go and get it. Just then, Sayaka spots it out in the open, stabbed into the ground. They all immediately head over to it. Sayaka, first of all, tries pulling it out of the ground, but she immediately gets struck by a bright stream of lightning. After that, Miyamoto explains that the blade strikes anyone who's unworthy. Miyamoto thinks them being here is a huge waste of time, so he tells them to leave. But just then, Yaiba pulls it out of the ground with ease. Sayaka is excited, Miyamoto drops his jaw, falls to the ground, and starts to think about his life. Even he wasn't able to pull that sword out in his prime, but this kid has pulled it out with ease. Could he be the legendary samurai he's waited centuries for? That's when he makes up his mind. He's going to mold Yaiba up to be the strongest samurai he's ever known. But honestly, Yaiba might have too much brain rot for that. After that, Yaiba tries to use the sword, but it's so heavy that he falls down with it. Miyamoto sees this and can tell that he's several light years away from mastering that sword. In order for him to brand the sword, he needs to first of all forge a spirit capable of conquering the thunder god's power within. That said, our boy decides to lock in. He draws the sword and maintains a deep stance while trying to summon the thunder god. The clouds get really dark. Yaiba starts to get struck by some thick yellow lightning, while everyone around just looks on. He manages to control the lightning and launches a thick beam of electricity across the floor. Miyamoto can see Yaiba is losing control of himself, so he lunges forward, delivering a swift strike to the back, which makes Yaiba go unconscious. Meanwhile, Onimaru is deep in the magic dungeon where he has just learned about the Raijinkan sword. He knows that if he has that sword, he would be unstoppable. It's a must for him to have it. Meanwhile, Yaiba has finally woken up. However, Miyamoto gives him some good news. The Thunder God has acknowledged him. But in order for him to wield the sword properly, he needs to either conquer its power by true courage or fall prey to its strength and become a demon, which is what happened to Onimaru and why he has those ugly horns on his head. As Yaiba is right now, he has zero chance of winning, but that doesn't demotivate him. He has a determined look on his face while he confidently says he's not going to lose to the Thunder God. He will wield the Raijinkan, and he will defeat Onimaru. Onimaru is still as thirsty for power as ever. He's in his magic dungeon and has just summoned 8 mystic ogres, with their sole purpose being to hunt down the Raijinkan sword. He pairs each of the ogres with some demon assistant to ensure the success of this mission. Meanwhile, Yaiba is deep in the woods, training with Miyamoto to become the next legendary samurai. His first test is to cross the river by stepping only on the lily pads, but Yaiba fails on his first try and doesn't even understand how he's supposed to pull that off. Miyamoto explains to Yaiba that he's not supposed to walk across, but rather whisk himself across and move like the wind. He demonstrates by leaping across the river, moving as light as a feather. He tells Yaiba that if he wants to learn how to do this, he needs to believe in himself, because even the slightest doubt in himself would prevent him from learning how to properly wield the sword. Yaiba is now more determined than ever, so he steps in the river with confidence, but falls into the water like a dumbass. At the same time, Sayaka and the animals decide to start preparing dinner. The scene shifts to the town parliament having a meeting discussing the national budget. That's when Onimaru literally bursts through the door with an ugly-ass monster suit on. The parliament security take one look at him and can see that he's now a full-on monster, so they fire some bullets at him, but he easily blocks them. He throws a slash of wind at the ceiling, which makes it rain glass, all while Onimaru says, "From now onwards, you shall obey me." Back in the forest, Yaiba expresses frustration, saying he gives up because he couldn't get it on the first try. Miyamoto looks over his impatient behavior and says that Yaiba reminds him of another samurai he has trained named Kojiro. As expected, Yaiba has no idea who that is, and Miyamoto almost chokes hearing Yaiba doesn't know the great Kojiro Sasaki. Kojiro was a once-in-a-generation swordsman. He was also really handsome too, but of course not as striking as Miyamoto. He was impulsive just like Yaiba and would always rely on his strength without focusing on tactics and strategy, and unfortunately, that was what led to his downfall. Miyamoto hands Yaiba a shed sword known as a scabbard. It's basically a sword Yaiba can use for the meantime until he is able to wield the Raijinkan. That evening, Sayaka is busy making dinner in the kitchen. That's when she gets 2 unexpected visitors. A 10 out of 10 Japanese baddie and a weird guy in a red cloak. Sayaka comes to the door, and the lady casually asks the whereabouts of the Raijinkan sword. Sayaka replies, casually telling them it's currently with Yaiba, but little does she know that these are 2 of the evil ogres Onimaru set out to obtain the Raijinkan sword. Sayaka accepts them with open arms, telling them to come inside and wait for Yaiba to get back. Sayaka invites them in for dinner. The guy in the red cloak is easily stuffing his face with a bowl of ramen. Sayaka suggests he take his cloak off, he's probably really hot in it. He thanks her for being so kind and agrees to take it off, but the lady uses her monster tail to slap him back to his senses. Just then, Yaiba walks in, saying he's starving. Sayaka welcomes him in and tells him that they have company. Miyamoto hasn't had any action in a long time, so he gets a little overexcited when he sees the beautiful lady inside the hut. But that's when the 2 guests decide to show their true colors. They launch an attack at Yaiba, throwing him out of the hut. Miyamoto takes an offensive stance against them and asks who they are. The guy in the cloak finally reveals himself to be a fat-ass crocodile named Garuda. The once beautiful lady transforms into a giant snake named Zapapukamus. They expected Yaiba and the others to be afraid or intimidated, but instead they just burst into laughter at how absurd their names sound. This pisses the ogres off, so they unleash their minions. Sayaka sees that things just got a lot more serious, so she tells Yaiba to stop laughing and focus. Right before they can get attacked, Yaiba springs into the air and lands a coordinated attack on the first wave of minions. Miyamoto observes that move from Yaiba and informs Sayaka that it's called the Shoken, a technique that uses laughter to agitate one's opponent and create an opening. Yeah, it's a sneaky move to use, but throwing one's opponent off guard is the most basic of the basics. Miyamoto watches how easily Yaiba is taking the minions down. Maybe he was wrong about Yaiba all this while. This time Zeppapo strikes, catching Yaiba off guard, but luckily, Miyamoto was there to bail him out. At the same time, Sayaka gets surrounded by some of the minions. She bluffs, saying they should get back because she knows jujitsu. One of them grabs her from behind. Katagura sees this and immediately springs into action trying to save her, but by the time he gets there, she already took him down with a single strike to the head. Meanwhile, Jiroda starts to fight Yaiba. He uses his long-ass tongue to grab the sheath of the sword, forcing Yaiba to unsheath the sword and unleash the power of the Thunder God. Miyamoto sees this and knows this is bad news because Yaiba hasn't been able to contain the power of the Thunder God, meaning that he'll likely get consumed by it. Yaiba gets consumed by the Thunder God, just like Miyamoto expected. He's about to deliver a very deadly slash of lightning, but luckily, Miyamoto is there just in time to knock him unconscious. But strangely, Yaiba regains consciousness and is now stuck in the Thunder God mode, meaning that he has no control over his mind or body. He roars and then sends a thunderbolt towards Miyamoto. He swiftly dodges it, but it ends up setting his treehouse on fire. Yaiba starts to attack everyone in sight, including the ones on his side. Miyamoto looks at Yaiba and shakes his head. Yaiba is now too far gone. The Thunder God is going to devour him if this keeps up. In the next moment, Yaiba locks eyes with Jiroda and is about to land a fatal blow on him, but Miyamoto steps in at the last second and protects him. He further asks Jiroda for a temporary truce, saying they'll need to work together to defeat Yaiba or else they're cooked. Jiroda understands the situation and agrees. Given the current situation, they are left with no other choice but to cut Yaiba down. They both charge at him, but Yaiba is somehow able to handle both of them at the same time, after which he launches a heavy thunderbolt, which destroys a tree that almost crushes Katagura and Sayaka. Miyamoto now has a new plan. He attacks from above while Jiroda attacks from the side. Jiroda sticks to the plan and stalls Yaiba for a second. Then in the next moment, Miyamoto jumps in about to deliver the final blow, but Yaiba still manages to block it. As their swords collide, the orb containing the power of the Thunder God falls out, so Yaiba returns back to his senses and is no longer under the influence of the Thunder God. Jiroda and Miyamoto jump up in celebration at the sight of this, but immediately separate themselves after they realize they technically still are enemies. Right now, Zeppo's minions have taken Sayaka hostage, so she tells Yaiba to give up the sword if he ever wants to see her again. She then instructs Jiroda to get rid of them, but Jiroda remembers how it was Miyamoto that saved him when Yaiba went out of control. Zeppo can tell Jiroda is now having mixed feelings, so she charges towards him, but Yaiba appears in front protecting him. "Isn't he one of you?" Yaiba asks. Zeppo replies, saying Lord Onimura has no time for pathetic, sentimental fools. The battle between Zeppo and Yaiba begins. Yaiba runs into the woods as a way of drawing Zeppo away from the others. Yaiba passes through the woods and easily defeats some of the minions, but when it comes to facing Zeppo, she's a lot stronger than he expected, so he's easily struck down. Yaiba distances himself from Zeppo as he thinks of his next move. He sees that Zeppo counters every attack he's made, so he charges at her, but this time tries something new. He spins the blade while running at her. He is knocked back again by Zeppo, but this time the blade maintains its centrifugal force and continues to spin. Some of the minions come up from behind. Yaiba throws the spinning blade at them, and it's so sharp that it's able to slice an entire tree into multiple pieces. As Yaiba chases the minions down, Miyamoto observes his technique and informs Sayaka that it's an old spear fighting technique that uses centrifugal force to keep the blade spinning. Zeppo can tell there's no way he's going to defeat them at this point, so he thinks he might be able to take some credit if he returns to Onimura with the Raijinkan orb. Yaiba sees that Zeppo is trying to get away with the orb. The only way he can get to him is by crossing the river, so without thinking, he swiftly steps across the lily pads and reaches the other side in a matter of seconds. Then he uses his Senpuken technique to slice Zeppo clean in half. After that, Zeppo transforms back into a normal snake. Yaiba releases him back into the wilderness and tells him to stay like that. Later that night, they all camp outside because Yaiba did burn down Miyamoto's treehouse. But Miyamoto isn't angry about it. He knows it wasn't his fault. Just then, Sayaka shows them real-time news coverage where Onimura broke into the National Diet Building. Onimura has now transformed into a full-on monster, and on seeing this, Yaiba knows he has to hasten his training with the Raijinkan because that's the only way he'll be able to defeat him. Hearing this, Miyamoto makes up his mind and decides that they're going to Ganryu Island to obtain a secret weapon that is made in the same way as the Raijinkan. Miyamoto has hoped that it could provide a hint as to how to better wield the Raijinkan. Miyamoto can't say for sure Yaiba will master the sword, but he definitely does have some potential. Then the next morning, they begin their journey to Ganryu Island. But as they travel, the airborne drone is seen floating above them, monitoring their every move. This was the end of episode 4. Subscribe to not miss the next part.